Malachi 2:16. I hate divorce, says the Lord God of Israel. I hate divorce. Pretty strong words from God. Divorce isn't something that society at large takes very seriously today. I was in Los Angeles recently. I saw a billboard literally said, "Are you bored? Here's our number." And it was a divorce attorney. Like, are you bored in your marriage? Just go ahead and get divorced. Wow. Now look, we're not going to cover anything we cover today to shame people who have been divorced. I know people who are divorced who literally had to get divorced for their physical protection or to protect their children who are being psychologically just demolished in this marriage. Some marriages are annullable, which is not the same as a divorce, but it's a decree from the church that the marriage never happened in the first place. But whatever the case is, whenever a child experiences divorce, what happens is that so much of the pain that the couple experienced is transferred to the child. So while that's really harsh words, I hate divorce, says the Lord God of Israel, there should also be healing words for people who are adult children of divorce, who experience divorce as little kids and find themselves in their adult years struggling with this stuff, to know that God loves you so much that He hates what happened to you. He hates what you had to go through. And I think God hates divorce because He loves kids. So we're going to talk today about healing from divorce for people who have experienced divorce as a kid. If you've been divorced and you have children, even adult kids, this is going to help you because it's going to help you navigate with them through some tough things to healing. And not only healing, but strangely in the mystery of the cross, to the life that God has in store for your kid, to even greater glory. And if you're an adult child of divorced parents, this is going to help you too for really obvious reasons. Whew. There's an intense intro to an intense episode. Thanks for being with us. Rachel Oline.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Be here.
We almost missed. Let's try that
I
again.
know,
Rachel
right?
Oline.
There it
Perfect.
is.
Now we're ready for a good interview. I'm so grateful for you coming on here.
Yeah.
Because this kind of topic is, it's intense, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So it's kind of like asking someone to come and rip their scabs open, but that's a part of the healing process.
It is.
Right?
Let's do it. Yeah, that's totally fine.
God bless you. I really admire you for it. I'm humbled and grateful that you'd share this with me and with people watching.
Yeah.
Tell me your story of divorce. How old were you? Mm-hmm. What happened? What did you remember as a kid?
Yeah, totally. So I was 7 years old when my parents got divorced. And what I remember is being called from, I think I was reading, which is an activity I love to do. Called into the living room. My parents sat me and my younger brother down, who was 4, and they told us and tried to explain that they were going to separate. And that meant they wouldn't live in the same house anymore. And I just remember tears abounding all over the place. Everyone was so upset and so hurt.
Parents too?
Yes. And it was just this devastating moment in time. And I didn't realize that it was going to impact literally my everyday life for the rest of my life. And so,
wow.
Yeah, and it was intense. And
you remember it vividly.
I do. I remember the color of the couch. I remember sitting on the floor. I remember so many things from that moment.
It's like, where were you when 9/11 happened?
Exactly.
Right? Something traumatic happens, and it's like, oh,
you know exactly where you were. And I know I was doing something I loved, and I'm pretty sure that was reading when I was 7.
Yeah.
And it was this kind of blindsiding. I had no indication my parents were going to split up. If they fought, I was unaware. So they did a really good job protecting me from any anger or hatred they had for each other. But then I had no clue. So it just happened. And then all of a sudden the next day, my dad wasn't living in our house, and he got an apartment a couple miles away from my mom's house. And I just remember as a kid being...
So good on your dad. He stayed nearby and
he
wanted to be present in your life.
Yeah. And we split time between my parents. And so I was with my dad 4 days every 2 weeks and my mom the rest of the time. And so it was just this back and forth. So I'd go to my dad's house, we'd have dinner and sleep there. And then the next day I'd be at my mom's house. And then we would do this every other weekend thing. And it was challenging. On, think teenage girl. I wanted to wear my jeans that I wanted to wear, and I'm at my dad's house, and those jeans are at my mom's house.
So
What am I supposed to do?
There's some logistical annoyances, no doubt.
Right, yeah.
Were you, what were you aware of at the time, besides when you were 7, besides just, like, this is confusing, what happens now? Was most of the stuff that you dealt with for years after, was that just stuff down inside, or how much of it were you consciously aware of 7, 8, 9, 10 of, like, this did this to me?
Yeah. So I was kind of an angry, temperamental child.
Okay.
So
So you were already kind of angry.
I was a little
You don't
annoyed.
look angry at all.
No, that's
You've
process of
done a good job.
healing. Jesus has done a good job of healing. But I was mad. And so I was stuffing it down, and then it would show up in an explosion of anger. So I would get mad at my dad or my mom, and I would blow up, and it was not a pretty sight.
Yeah.
And I remember in those moments there being this kind of aftermath, and people saying, like, she's just processing the divorce. And you're like, oh, that's what I'm doing? So there was always this stigma attached to it.
Did you feel a little dismissed by that comment?
100%.
Yeah.
Because I was processing it, but it was like, is this actually allowed? Am I doing it in a way that is embarrassing to the people around me, and in a way that no one really wants to hear or wants to acknowledge that I was going through this pain? So I learned.
So you're
Stop it down.
So you're dealing with the fact that when you're feeling normal responses to something really traumatic, right? That and it is traumatic.
It is.
And that's why you remember it in such detail. It's like the foundation of your life is like,
Yeah.
that's that relationship. And I have a friend who told me in his late 30s. He's like that message that no, love is conditional. Yeah. Like, if something can end this, then you shouldn't feel secure in any love, you know. But your response, that's normal. So then you start to internalize, but I'm the problem,
Right.
for feeling these normal responses
Exactly.
to something so traumatic.
Yeah.
So then you stuff it through your teenage years. Don't cry out loud.
Don't do it.
Keep it inside. Learn how to hide your feelings. It's a horrible
Yeah,
song, by the way.
isn't
It really is. It's kind of hilariously horrible. So how did that come out in your teenage years? So anger. How else was that coming out?
Another place that it really showed up was perfectionism. So it didn't matter how many people told me, this isn't your fault, like, you had nothing to do with this. I really internalized that if I could just be perfect, then maybe it would go away. And maybe my parents would get back together, and maybe we could just fix all of this. And so I was like, I can fix this.
Wow.
I will be perfect. I will get the perfect grades. I will do all the perfect things. I will say nothing wrong.
Did you know you were telling yourself that line of reasoning, that I can fix this? Or was it just, a lot of times we think without thinking about what we're thinking? You know?
Totally.
Which level was it on?
I think it was dual. There were several levels. I think there was a very deep level where I was probably unaware of it, but I knew I wanted my parents to be married. I desired that. I spent birthday wishes on that, you know? And so I really did believe, like, okay, I can do all of these things. I can fix it, even though it wasn't my issue to fix. I just was the brunt of all of the problems and aftermath. So.
Man, what a lot to bear as a kid. By the way, if you're watching us live, can you bring up the number real quick, the text-in number? You can interrupt my questions with yours at 720-650-0100. 720-650-0100. Just text your question in, and I'll let it break up our conversation. So a lot of these wounds that we have as kids, there comes a moment in adulthood or a process in adulthood where you look back and realize, whoa, like, there's so many various personality traits I have, and repeat behaviors and relationships that are coming up because of something that happened to me all this time ago. What was that for you? What brought to light all the stuff that you had stuffed down?
Yeah, I think there were two moments. So one was when I went to college. I became very interested in the Catholic faith, more so than I had when I was a teenager.
Praise God.
Yeah.
What did that for you?
Just different retreats. I had made a very clear, like, I'm going to be Catholic in college, no matter what it takes.
Really?
And so then I just sought it out. Yeah.
That's not everybody's experience.
No.
A lot of people are like, I'm taking a break just for 4 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe forever.
But I did not. I
Why
was
did you
like,
decide
I'm
that?
going
I'm
to
sorry.
find the people. I went on a retreat and
in high school
was
that
just
got
sure.
you?
I was like, I'm
What
going to be
retreat was
Catholic
it?
forever.
Was it-
Altitude adjustment. Do you remember those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Archdiocese of Denver.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
we
awesome.
do that. Yeah. So,
Altitude adjustment.
yeah,
That's
it's a
so
long
cool.
time ago.
That's a great name.
So, yeah, so we went there, and I was just sure I was going to be Catholic. So I started hanging out with all of these very devout people, and I started to realize most of their parents weren't divorced. So we were having this Bible study, and I'm bringing up these things about my parents' divorce, and it was almost like we don't know how to respond. We're not sure what to do with that comment because our parents are happy and they're living together, and we don't know what that sort of fracture.
So that
looks
experience in college made you feel the pain of what
Yes.
you'd been deprived of.
Yes. And so I stuffed it down. I was like, well, we don't have to worry about this, even though it showed up every weekend I went home, because I should probably make sure I see both of my parents, and that wasn't going to happen in one house.
Wow.
So how do I make sure that I see both of them? How do I make sure that I'm, not hurting anyone's feelings? Because if I'm trying to fix the problem, I'm trying not to, muddy the waters or create waves.
Yeah. You heard the word parentified?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure
That
you're
was my
familiar with
life.
that word. Yeah.
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 That was me.
You're
And-
parentified at a young age.
Yeah.
It's a big burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then the second part happened when I was about 25. I was teaching. I'm a public school teacher, and
That's traumatic.
It is, totally. It's really challenging.
You're teaching 8th grade math, right?
Yeah.
Which is like cool when the kid's into math. My son is like a math nerd. Yeah.
If they're not.
He's heaven for a math teacher. But,
yeah.
So you're teaching math.
Yeah, and really leaning into my perfectionism in a profession where it's hard to be perfect. Like there's no perfect teacher. There's good teachers, but there's no perfect ones. And so I reached out to get counseling just to talk about the different ways I was dealing with my job. And in counseling, it was several months in, and I found this Catholic counselor. She was phenomenal. And we started talking about something in one of the sessions. And she's like, do you think this has anything to do with the fact that your parents were divorced? I was like, no.
Wow.
And then we start talking.
I love
and
when
was
counselors know the answer and then ask the question, do you think maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still give the wrong answer where I was like, no, there's no way. And then we kept talking, and I was like, oh no. And we just started like connecting the dots and drawing the lines and realizing that this event that seemed like it should have been a one-time thing was really pervasive in my life. It was just everywhere, and it was showing up everywhere, and now was showing up in some unhealthy ways that I was dealing with challenges in my job.
Tell me more about the ways it was showing up in you.
I'm an extreme perfectionist.
Yeah, it was the perfectionism for sure.
I want things to be perfect, and when they're not, the first place I go is a place of not being compassionate towards myself. So I just tell myself, like, you didn't do this perfectly. Why even try? You should quit your job. Like I go the first place is like doom and, sadness. And so it was showing up there a lot. It was showing up in like relationships with roommates. I was living with roommates. And if a conflict happened, I was going to avoid it like the plague, because think back to how my parents got divorced. It was a surprise. So to me, that said, someone can leave you at any time. And so I was really thinking about that in the ways I was dealing with my roommates, because I was like, please don't leave me. But also I can't handle this conflict, so I'm going to just shut you out.
The conflict is the end of the world.
Yeah. And it was those self-protective behaviors. So then I wasn't really being vulnerable with people and open to being real friends.
Wow.
So.
I'm going to guess marriage kicked a big door open in your heart with all this stuff too.
Oh, it sure did.
Which, by the way, good job getting married.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a vocation that some people can be really afraid of if they've been through this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to repeat cycles. Were you conscious of that fear when you were dating, when you were getting married, or was that not a big thing for you?
I knew I wanted to be married. Like, this is something I want to do. And then we were getting closer, and I was like, am I supposed to do this? And really just letting some of those lies creep in. Like, you don't know what this is like. You don't know what a marriage looks like. So what makes you think you can do this? And really going then to counseling and to spiritual direction. Like, yes, you can do this. And we always say, like, it's a miracle that I'm married, that I didn't lose my faith in the beauty of the sacrament of marriage. And it's been like healing. Like, God heals through people. And every time my husband and I have an argument and he chooses to like stay in the conflict and stick around, I'm like, oh, that's what that's like. No one left. Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Praise God.
Yes.
Love heals. like real, just not counting the cost, just in it to win it love. Like it's so healing.
Yeah,
but it's also like it's painful too.
Yeah.
Right? That's what with faith. Like we sometimes think it's really hard to love God, but the opposite is true. Like it is hard to love God. The really hard part is this unconditional love that's strong enough to make a universe is aimed at this chair.
Yeah. Like what?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of, but and at first it's like that joyous response, and then as you get deeper into the wound, it's like that part of me too.
Yeah.
That part of me too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there, and we're going to get in a minute into the ministry you're involved in, where you're working with lots of people who experience this. Yeah. Are the things that you've experienced, is this typical? Is this a pattern that's like perfectionism, a fear of abandonment, anger, stuffing it down because you're the problem, parentification? These are some of the things that came up so far. Are these the typical things you see like again and again and again?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're so unique, right?
Yeah. What we say is our stories are different, right? So our healing process, our healing journey is going to be different, but all of it sure rhymes. It's super similar. And so what's so great about being able to connect with other adult children of divorce is that now I get to be in a space where I can say something and they already on some level understand where I've been and what I'm going through, which allows for that deeper healing. And so there is a lot of these things come up, anger, anxiety, boundaries, forgiveness.
I hate the devil so much.
So much.
No, seriously, like there's the psychological wounds that I think dark spirits also prey upon. And to think of lies we tell ourselves that I think are not only natural, but also supernatural in their origin. And, like that lie that you're a freak or you're alone and you're the problem. Like you still kind of believe these things till you get in a room of everybody else who's like, oh, okay, I'm normal because you've all experienced this and this is the normal response.
Yeah.
Before I get into that life-giving wounds, and I want you to literally plug it shamelessly in the website and everything like that, why are people so dang afraid to talk about this stuff? This is a quiet suffering that a quarter of the population is going through, and they don't just own it. Like this takes a lot of courage to come here and say, this is how this messed me up. Why?
I remember going on my first retreat and walking into the room and seeing people that I knew in other spheres and being like, you too? And just, it was like this thing where we all were bearing the pain of our parents' divorce and no one knew about it and no one talked about it. And that's when I learned about the wound of silence. And this is a wound that's really common to adult children of divorce, or ACODs.
Like that, ACODs.
Yeah.
It's helpful to put names on these things. Okay.
It's easier than saying adult children of divorce over and over again. So that wound of silence that we've been silenced as adult children of divorce, partially because of what you said earlier, that society doesn't take divorce seriously. So there's all this happy divorce talk, like your parents did the best they could. It was all for the best. It'll all work out in the end.
Or worse, you just got to go discover yourself.
Right.
Without regard to, talk about narcissism. And here's the thing. Everything you just said too might be true. I won't give an easy pass to the narcissistic thing, but there's some situations where, it was the best thing that it had to happen. Especially in an obvious example, of physical abuse. Like get out, get the kids out. And that's a really easy, obvious example. But even then,
there are effects.
And
the children bear effects.
It's okay to talk about them.
And we should, right? And it's that idea that like kids are resilient, like they're gonna figure out how to do this.
Rub some bacon on it.
And I was in survival mode. It didn't look like it, but I was in survival mode because I was going back and forth and trying to figure out how to do my very normal, preteen, teenage things, but in two separate houses. And sure, I'm resilient, but I had to live in this like survival mode in order to do all of the things that were expected of me that wouldn't have been expected of a kid who had came from an intact home.
Right.
And that made it just so challenging. And I think the other thing too, why we don't talk about it, is it's really hard to bear, right? Like, I think about my parents. I love them.
Yeah.
I can hate the fact they got divorced and love them so much.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it easier for them to hear that divorce is bad and God hates divorce and
that it
divorce
hurt
is wrong.
you.
Yeah. And I think that's what also makes it difficult is people don't acknowledge that it's an actual wound. A lot of times it's that, but it happened 25 years ago. Aren't you over it? I'm like, no, because it showed up at my birthday last Monday when my whole family's at the table and like my mom's there with her boyfriend and my dad's on the opposite side of the table. Like, we're all here living this like.
There's always this reminder.
Yeah.
But I there's something about coming around and saying, like, I'm going to own my pain that helps you get to a point of actual forgiveness and even gratitude for what you do have. Have you been able to forgive your parents from the depths of your soul? Is that something you're still working through?
Yeah, it's a process, right? So I forgive a lot. I forgive
you
over
keep doing it.
and over and over. Yeah.
70 times, 7 times.
Exactly. And
it's liberating, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Because it's so hard to do. And again, it comes up at birthdays and weddings and holidays and the fact that I have to tell stories twice. Like, I already told this story. Now I have to do it again, you know? It just shows up in so many ways. And so it gives a lot of chances for you to forgive or for me to forgive. And I think that I'm working on getting to that depths of the soul kind of forgiveness that you can only do like by the grace of God.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't do it by myself.
Yes. It's a real grace. Forgiveness is a spiritual battle. And when you don't, and forgiveness, it comes down to you were owed something, injustice. You were owed not getting that call when you're 7 in that room, everybody's crying. You're owed something. And forgiveness is I'm going to let the debt go that is owed to me. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I'm going to deny that it caused me pain.
Right.
That's just denial.
Exactly.
It's that choice is so freeing. When we don't let it go, then we're enslaved to the debt in our own way. Good on you.
Exactly.
Good for you for doing that. Joe asked, and I want you to give a plug for this retreat right now, okay? So Joe asked, how can I support a friend whose parents are getting divorced? Slow pitch.
Here it is. So I'm part of a ministry called Life Giving Wounds. Yeah. It is a national ministry that has a chapter in Denver, along with like other chapters around the country. On the Life Giving Wounds website, which I think is lifegivingwounds.org.
Lifegivingwounds.org.
Marvelous.
3 words.org.
Perfect.
Yep.
You can go and find out when retreats are happening in your area. And then there's an online retreat that happens starting September 29th. And so it is on Thursday evenings over like Zoom for a certain number of weeks. And it simulates what a weekend retreat would be in person. But the weekend retreats in person, that was life-changing for me, just in recognizing the spiritual healing that needed to be done on top of like the psychological healing through counseling.
Okay, tell me the distinction between the two.
Yeah, so in counseling.
So, by the way, go to that retreat, guys.
Yeah,
go to the retreat.
Make sure you go.
Go to the one online.
Yeah.
Like, don't just sit there in your woundedness. No. God wants you to be free.
Yeah, and the one in Denver is October 14th through 16th.
Okay.
And I'm the MC, so you can come and,
awesome.
We'll chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that spiritual healing of understanding that Christ rose with his wounds. And when I heard that, I was like, excuse me?
Yes.
It was like revolutionary for me. And through those transformed wounds of Christ, he wants to transform ours, right? And that's the healing that God desires for all of us. And it goes so deep into like the depths of our soul. And where counseling is so helpful and can help me work through the things on like a practical level and see how the dots are connecting. Yeah. It's only the things that Christ can give us through his desire to heal us if we desire to be healed.
I just love that image. He rose and the wounds weren't closed.
Yes.
And there was a perfection in that risen body because of the wounds.
Yes.
That this sign of love, and that wound, those wounds became a source of encounter with the Father's love. It's that hope that gives someone the strength to say, "I'm not irreparably broken. Yes. I'm another wounded Christ. Is what I am."
Yeah.
And it's that hope that helps parents who have maybe inflicted that wound, to say, I don't have to hide from this. I can know that even in this, my kid can become who God made them to be, not despite this, but because of this, within this. So let's lean into this, not pretend that nothing happened and you're fine and kids are resilient. I mean, these are the things that come when you don't have hope, real hope.
Yes.
I mean, real hope is like, let's go into the dirt and then hope.
Yes.
You know, out of the depths I cry to you, the psalmist says. Out of the depths, not pretending I'm on a mountaintop, right?
Yeah. And letting our wounds be a point of intimacy with Christ.
Yes.
And like letting him into those and realizing that it's through that there is hope. That like my parents' divorce was very challenging and it still is, but like the hope that's there it's so good. And I don't want it to be all like doom and gloom. Your parents got divorced and we're going to cry about it you know, from now to eternity.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. We're going to, you know, just be joyful in the hope that God has for us, you know, and be hopeful in him.
Amen.
He's going to heal us.
Amen.
It's a long journey, though.
What do you, I mean, you reflected a lot on yourself, on your wounds. You've experienced this healing love of God. What are you grateful for? And don't answer this if nothing comes to mind. It's totally fine, okay? And if nothing comes to mind, maybe just have this be a thing you contemplate later in prayer. But what do you love about yourself because of these things that you went through?
I love that I am willing to talk about it. I wasn't there for a long time. And that in sharing this, that Christ can work through me. I love that this is like me being an instrument and just being like, I cannot fix these problems on my own, but Christ can do that work through me. And that in all of it, I still hold on to joy so fast. And like, I am joyful even in the midst of all of this. And that is, that's the big thing, you know?
You have a superpower.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like that.
It's true. That moves me to tears. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the superpower of being able to meet someone who's actually gone through that and to actually go there with them. You have the superpower of knowing what the joy of the Lord is, which is not a superficial passing feeling from circumstances.
Yeah.
And you could say that.
Right.
That's why St. Paul said, I boast in the cross.
Right.
Like that's, right?
Yep.
This is the badge of honor.
This is.
And it doesn't feel proud to boast in the cross, right? It's the most humbling, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like my badge of honor is that hole in my hand right there, man.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So the healing for that healing retreat again, lifegivingwounds.org. That's for people who are 18 or older, 17 or older.
Yeah, 18 or older.
Yeah.
To be that adult. I think we talk about when I was a kid, I knew the divorce was happening. I didn't really know how it was affecting me, and a lot of times those things kind of simmer until adulthood. We really understand things are going on. Something's affecting me.
Can a mature 17-year-old watch online? I actually just met one the other day at an event, and he was so distraught after my talk, and it was about just the love of God. He came to me in tears. My parents getting divorced. He really needed to hear so badly me just look him in the eye and say, "You can do this.
Yeah.
The Lord loves you. You're gonna be okay."
Yeah.
Can a mature 17-year-old watch the one online at least? And
I'm not sure.
I'm thinking of my buddy here.
We can.
Okay,
we can
we'll make it happen.
Reach
right?
out.
Reach out.
And
Reach
figure it out.
And there'll be people outside to support you when you reach out, even if you know. But what about for kids? I mean, let's say there's a parent who's watching who's very distressed, thinking of these things right now, and it's hard for that parent to look at this. What advice would you have for that parent to do for their child who's 7, 8, 12, 15? What steps can they take to help this become a resurrected wound rather than something destructive?
I think sowing the seeds right now that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be upset and to show that you're upset. You don't have to stuff it down and acknowledge that something happened. If there are some of those times that you want to just be like, buck up, kid, you're going to be fine, stop and think. And allow your child to experience the sadness that they're probably feeling, or like the anger they're feeling, in a healthy way, obviously. But just acknowledge that this is a wound. for that child now and will be one later. But hopefully by acknowledging it now, that wound of silence can be eased a little bit later.
What's that saying? If it's mentionable, it's manageable.
Yes.
I forget where I heard that.
Yeah,
Mr.
like
Rogers. I don't know who said that.
Yeah. And just, I think that's true for anyone. If you encounter even like an adult child of divorce, just that acknowledging, like, I am so sorry that happened to you. And they might brush you off. Like, it's fine, I'm fine. But just that was a hurt that you had to encounter. And I'm so sorry that you did. And say that to the kids too. They need to hear that this is a hurt.
That's a great call to me. I have friends who lived through that, and just to say, it's important to say, and I say to you right now, like, you deserved more than what happened, and it's heavy.
It is.
Man, God is so good. Yeah. You know, and so if you've lived, thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
Really humbled and honored that you were here and opened up like that. Yeah. So thank you. And thanks for sharing. I know you're sharing it for the people who are watching.
Yeah.
So we love you guys. If you have lived through a divorce, the Lord loves you. If you've been divorced, the Lord loves you. If you're divorced and the Lord loves you. If you've messed up and you're looking back and thinking, yeah, maybe it happened because I was a narcissist, the Lord still loves you. No matter where you find yourself, He can pick that up and turn every wound, even the ones you inflicted on yourself, into risen wounds. You can't be afraid of them, though. Dive straight in. Thanks for watching. Man, wasn't that great? Listen, if you don't want to be happy, be sure not to subscribe. But if you want a more joyful life, the kind of life that God created you for, the kind of life Jesus promised when He said, I came to give you life to the full, then make sure you hit subscribe and share this channel with everybody you know.